Alright, I was a bit late to the party on this one, so I'm gonna keep it real short and simple, stick to the facts here, and get all of you up to speed. So, last season, Studio Trigger's new anime Gridman aired, and according to my anime list, it's the studio's least watched show since Ninja Slayer, which is a shame because it's the best anime they've ever made. Let's move on to more facts, though. Spoilery ones this time, so viewer beware. Akane and Rika are gay for each other. Like, super gay. Like, Akane literally stabs and hospitalizes one of Rika's close friends, and then she leaves his side at the hospital to go run after Akane and tell her they're still friends though gay. But okay, let's step back a minute. Obviously, the whole reason this video exists in the first place is that a lot of people think Akane and Rika aren't gay, so let's unpack that. People were confused by the series for a while because its main character was kinda pretty characterless, which seems like it might be an issue for your main character. Only he isn't the main character, or is he? Turns out that Yuta is actually possessed by a cartoon robot superhero, whose only feelings are teamwork good, and monsters destroying the city and killing those who live within it bad, and smashing the monsters destroying the city and killing those who live within it good, which frankly is a platform better than what half of the approximately 37 Democrats who've announced their candidacy already have got, so I can't complain. Gridman 2020. The reason our characterless main character not main character and 2020 Democratic hopeful Yuta is important is that this character's characterlessness sort of left the presumed hetship out to dry. You see, people figured that he, as the main guy, would start having a romantic thing going on with Rika, the main girl. In episode 4, Yuta admits to having a crush on Rika, so it made sense to predict a romantic direction. After all, that's what happens 95% of the time with these things. But as the series progressed, Yuta's character didn't, for the reasons just explained. And so neither did any sort of romantic relationship. In fact, Rika sort of came to mostly ignore him, because her sights were set on someone else. What we came to learn was that the actual focus character for the series was the antagonist, Akane, a goddess who created the world of the series and everyone who lives within it to escape from her social isolation and extreme depression in the real world. Now, Akane is where things really get interesting. Akane is, as you'd expect from that character description, desperate for interpersonal validation. Because of this, she comes on to most of the characters in the series. When she traps each of the main characters in their own dream world in a desperate last bid to win them over, she basically offers sex to Utsumi at the end to try and keep him there. And the world she constructs for Yuta is one in which they're dating. Add to this things like the series generally using sexual imagery for her, like in what the animators of the series referred to as the foot job scene, and any bits of skinship she has with Rika certainly can't be concluded to be proof of romance all on their own. That stuff is just Akane's tactic for everybody. With all of that established, the way that the relationship between Akane and Rika is handled is markedly different from any of Akane's other relationships and any of Rika's others. Past the halfway mark of the series, once Rika's gone through the arc of coming to trust her allies, almost her entire focus is invested in Akane, and any of the suggestive scenes about Yuta being into her also pretty much disappear. The narrative arc at the end of Gridman is all about Rika getting through to Akane on a personal level and convincing her that she cares deeply about her. Akane is constantly the thing on the forefront of Rika's mind, and in spite of Akane killing many people, Rika is still telling her that she's a good person and close friend at the end when Akane actively tries to push her away. But okay, all I've done at this point is prove that the series is about Akane's personal development, redeeming herself and finding the will to fight through her feelings of isolation, and doing so primarily through her relationship with Rika. That relationship could totally be one of simple friendship and still work, so let's get into the gay shit. For starters, if you weren't already convinced by what I said the show is about, the entire ED is devoted to Akane and Rika's relationship, with none of the other main cast members appearing at all. What's more interesting about this beautiful piece of work, however, is what it says about that relationship. The backgrounds are hyper-real by virtue of being stylized live-action shots, and the somewhat overbearing camera effects are revealed to be present because this is literally snapshots the two of them are amateurishly taking with their phones. The ED is all about conveying the intimacy of their relationship, and again, this could just be friendship, but one specific shot makes that the definitively less likely possibility. Around the midpoint of the ED, Rika walks her hand towards Akane playfully, and then in the last shot, Akane reciprocates. This action is one that is heavily romantically coded. Now, I've got to define this term real quickly, because if I don't, I'll have 1,000 comments by people who think they've proven my argument wrong just because they don't know what the word means. Coding is when meaning is assigned to a given action, character trait, etc. So, for example, rain in fiction often means sadness. There's nothing inherent to rain that means it must be sad, and yet over centuries of fiction, through repeated usage, it has come to acquire that meaning. That coding. As another example, back when gay stuff was banned from movies, filmmakers had to get around those rules by avoiding explicit stuff like confessions or physical affection, and so two men touching their cigarettes together became code for them being gay. It could be excused as just using your cigarette to light your buddies, but it carried another specific meaning. So, to get back to the initial point, walking your hands together is a well-worn romantic trope, in part because as that march of the fingers proceeds, eventually your hands will reach each other and those fingers will become intertwined. This ED is far from definitive on its own, but if you don't see the implication of romance here, you're being purposefully ignorant to the truth. This coding pops up again in Dika's dream world. Literally the first shot of the dream world is an LGBT poster, and then right after that we see a little gay pride sticker on the wall of the nurse's office. Now, nurses' offices are common settings in anime and manga for all manner of romantic hijinks. The isolation they offer make them quite handy for that, but they're especially common in Yuri series. Two girls alone in the nurse's office together is romantically coded, and adding the poster and sticker on top of that, it goes past the point of romantic coding and is just undeniably meant to have a romantic edge to it. Utsumi and Yuta's dream worlds are also explicitly romantic, to be fair, but let's remember why they're romantic. Akane is trying to recreate an ideal fantasy to draw these people in and make them care about her. She tries to be Utsumi's idyllic hot nerdy friend to keep him there, and tries to play the girlfriend role for Yuta. The only explanation for why her interactions with Dika would also be romantically charged ones are if romance with Akane is something Dika would be receptive to. These dreams are very strong evidence of Dika being into girls, be she bi or an outright lesbian, because again, there'd be no reason for the romantic tension if she wasn't. Yuta isn't particularly into Akane, but Utsumi is, and yet it's Dika who gets the final goodbye with her. And again, we get a deeply romantically coded moment when Dika says, "I want to be together with you forever." Yes, that could just mean as friends, but don't be a myopic jackass. You know as well as I do that that line carries heavy romantic implication, because it's marriage that's the pledge of everlasting love and togetherness. And we know that the show's creator, Akira Amamiya, is interested in telling stories of romance between girls, because he literally wrote a Yuri novel about two of Gridman's side characters while the series was in development. These two girls that Akane is friends with are in fact in love with each other. So with all of that evidence, with the flirtatious scene in the ED, the LGBT poster and the sticker, with Amamiya's history of telling Yuri stories in the Gridman universe, with Dika's closest thing you can get to a confession without literally confessing, and with other suggestive scenes that I didn't bring up to avoid being too repetitive aside, why was there a group of people so committed to arguing that Akane and Dika definitely weren't gay for each other? Well, the obvious first answer is just heteronormativity in general being at play. Audiences are used to the main guy and main girl getting together and used to their characters, especially their main ones, being straight, outside of the dedicated gay character genres of Yuri and Yaoi. But there's elements to Gridman specifically that really amplified this effect. You see, before Gridman came out, an interview excerpt with Amamiya made the rounds, where he said that he specifically asked the character designer to give Dika thicker thighs than is typical and a big butt. This created a firestorm of activity, with Dika being hailed as the thick queen and loads of fan art of sexy Dika being produced. Basically every Gridman video had to make at least one obligatory joke about how much they wanted to be crushed by her thighs. Setting aside the somewhat creepy implications of a mass of adults collectively obsessing over how sexy a high school girl's legs are, we can see what happened here. That typical expectation that characters will be straight was heightened by the fact that before the series came out, a bunch of its audience was prepped to view Dika as a sex object. There was an investment in her straightness. Literally, the most widely known thing about the show was that it had the big thigh girl, and so a group primarily consisting of straight men went into it with a sense of entitlement towards Dika. If she's gay, that means she isn't sexually available to them, or their audience stand-in. And that sexual possessiveness towards Dika is what really fueled the fires of heteronormativity into the raging blaze of insistences that she isn't gay. Feelings that women's sexual existence is in service of men are still rampant culturally. Literally a few days ago, a Grammy-winning Billboard-topping artist put out a song where he says he'll F you straight to a girl into other women. Gridman is really a fascinating case as an example of this entitlement in action. With all hope lost for Yuta-Rika shippers because by that point in the series there'd just been no more material supporting them as a couple, things got weird. Really weird. They started resorting to arguing that because Akane had designed the characters of the world to be her friends, Rika couldn't actually be into her, because the nature of that attraction was artificially induced by Akane. This is fascinating because the literal point of the series is refuting that idea. The fact that Rika being created for Akane's sake doesn't invalidate her feelings towards Akane is the entire point. When everyone is breaking out of the dream, Akane says, "But you were born as my friend," and Rika says, "Sorry, this isn't real." Even if these people were created by Akane to be what she wanted, we've seen that they have their own agency and can break out of Akane's illusions. People were so invested in Rika not being gay that they contradicted the entire central argument the series was making in order to argue her not gayness. And that says something really interesting about how queer women are perceived and treated. When the final scene of the series did its wild Akane wakes up in the real world represented by live action scene, she doesn't look much like her anime self, and instead looks like a conventional Japanese schoolgirl with mid-length dark hair. This argument was so bizarre that I honestly forgot to even address it the first time I wrote this script, but if I don't, I will have dozens of people making it in the comments. So the argument is that because real-world Akane looks like Rika, she can't be into Rika. For starters, Rika just looks like a fairly conventional Japanese schoolgirl, anime-ized. So of course she looks like real-world Akane. It's a big leap to assume Rika was modeled after Akane's real-world self specifically. But even granting the idea that Akane specifically designed Rika to be the more plain-looking girl she is in real life while giving herself a voluptuous body, Rika is still a consciousness unto herself. Even if Rika is modeled after Akane physically, she isn't mentally or emotionally. Rika has friends she chats with in class, while Akane's whole hang-up is the fact that she was socially isolated. The idea that this would be some sort of self-cest is absurd. Maybe this argument mostly came about because the heterosexuals in the audience don't get it, so let me explain. Us gays are blessed with the wonderful ability to be attracted to people who look very similar to us, so no, that doesn't disqualify this relationship. To address the elephant in the room before I leave, yes, at the very end we learn that old Yuta had a crush on Rika, and that's why he had those suggestions of romance early on. Yuta's feelings were leaking through even though he was possessed by Gridman. When she learns of this crush, Rika blushes a bit with surprise. Just like earlier instances, this is romantically coded. Could it just be a combination of blushing and surprise, which isn't uncommon in anime, and being a bit bashfully flattered by the fact he was into her? Yep, but it could also indicate that she has some feelings for him too. However, for those to whom this applies, I have to ask why, when given one thing that indicates but doesn't explicitly confirm romantic interests between Yuta and Rika, did you jump on that as proof of her straightness, when at the same time interpreting multiple strong instances of romantic coding between Akane and Rika as not indicating romantic feelings between the two of them? Of course, that's a rhetorical question, because I've already got a pretty good idea as to why that's the case. Also, one little fun fact that I wasn't able to fit in that I want to share at the end here is that in that same Rika Thai interview, we learned that the design concept given for Akane was, what if Amamiya became a high school girl? If Amamiya is into girls, and Akane is Amamiya, then surely she is also into girls. Checkmate, atheists. Go on and join my Discord server, it's fun, it's public, it's free, and if you appreciate what I'm doing, consider supporting me on Patreon or with a one-time donation through Ko-fi. A big thank you to Psyker, MathWiz97, Jonathan Conley, Tyler Monk, TeenShow37, Lord Liquid Bacon III, Elaine Aldfelt, David McCown, Smokeweed Sephiroth 420, J-Man4747, Chase Sutter, Lucas Holcomb, Randall Hudson, Elaine Gilstrom, John Smith, Mad Marks, Booty Warrior GT, Gia Lee, Melody Heron Anderson, Rose Scott, and everyone else supporting me there already.